Hello again, I am Nixel. This is my little reflection ramble about WoW, where I talk about each expansion and reflect on them. I did the Burning Crusade previously, so if you missed that, go and have a look. Or don't. So the Burning Crusade is behind us, and it's time for Wrath of the Lich King. Time to choose where you want to level in. Borean Tundra or Howling Fjords. I think I picked Borean Tundra? I remember going to both places, but I do remember Borean Tundra a lot more, so that's probably right. I did quite a few of the early levels as a Holy Paladin, because I grouped up with some guild members to just mass AoE and tag stuff. So I just spent a lot of time keeping them alive, after which I believe I went Retribution for solo questing. There's not much that stuck out to me during leveling, to be honest, but one thing that did was the town under Naxxramas in Dragonblight. I don't know what it is, but I like that town. This necropolis came and the whole town was just decimated, and now they're encroaching on the little keep doing their last stand. Pretty rad. Not original, of course, but I liked it. So leveling progressed, Borean Tundra and some Howling Fjord, I guess, into some Dragonblight and some Grizzly Hills. Now, people say that Grizzly Hills is one of the best looking zones in the game, and I find that really confusing. Have you guys not seen trees before? The moment I got a quest to go to Zul'Drak, I bailed that place. Zul'Drak, on the other hand, felt amazing. There were so many cool quest lines to do that I honestly felt bummed out when I had to leave the place. I recall dinging 80 in Icecrown before trying to figure out how to proceed. I was ahead of the curve at this point for the guild, so I recall I may have had to wait that day till we had enough people to start doing dungeons. LFG wasn't implemented till the last raid tier, so you still had to gather groups properly. It didn't take that long for people to catch up, and I began healing 5-mans for quite a while until we had a raid group going. Now, we didn't have an easy time in Naxxramas. Unlike the people who cleared it on the first day in greens, we struggled quite a bit, but it was alright for now. Also, at this point, I was 2 or 3 years older, and I had a bit of independence, so instead of doing the usual 2 hours, I could finish a full 4-hour raid. Yay me! We cleared all the content in its bare bones era, before moving on to the harder ways. And at this point, I asked the guild leader if I could reroll to a DPS, as we had gathered quite a big healing core. And you know what? They approved. I ended up rerolling to a DPS warrior. It was stressful at first, as I've never enjoyed being carried, so I pushed myself to gear up really hard, and it didn't take more than 1 or 2 raids until I was competing for top of the meters. One of our usual top performers was even surprised and whispered me, as they had a usual inside joke of, okay, who will be at the top of the meters, mages or locks? And suddenly a brown color topped the fight. I enjoyed warrior DPS, but it brought a new problem to my play. What spec is the best for DPS? While as a paladin, I had no other option than being a holy to heal. But warriors had 2 DPS specs. That was my gateway to min-maxing. I spent a significant amount of time on logging sites and elitist jerks, determining what's best for me. Going from arms to fury, a lot, depending on available gear. In the end, we cleared Sartharian 3 Drake mode on both 10-man and 25-man. Though I wasn't in on the 10-man kill, sadly. Sartharian was a really cool boss though, to be honest. As much as the lava waves took down a lot of people unaware, I loved his voice lines whenever he did it.
Your charred bones will litter the floor!
But let us move on to Ulduar. Many say it's the best raid in the game, and I can't fault them for that. The fights were hard and epic. Hard mode as a tuning knob was a brilliant, though limited idea. It's also where I got my first taste of we're actually better than average, maybe? So I forgot to mention that Wrath of the Lich King brought in a new slider for raiding. You could rate the place as 10 people or 25 people. And we of course did both for Nax and Ulduar. But Ulduar is where I feel we took it a bit further. We had one group which was somewhat dedicated to doing 10-man, and we managed it quite well, even going as far as to clearing the meta achievement for 10-man. Now, we never managed Algalon, the hidden last boss at the time, but that was really considered world first high-end difficulty, so I personally didn't feel too bad about it. However, at the time you could count the guilds who had done the meta achievement on the server with one hand, so it was a really proud moment for me. In terms of 25-man, we were one of the first to clear the raid on normal difficulty. I think we were number 3 on Alliance side, and that was quite a proud moment as well. Though surprisingly, some other guild members at the time were way more happy about it than I was, as they plastered it on server forums like children. Like, really plastered it, which was pretty cringe. It catered a lot of enmity from other guilds, at least on the forums, but only silly billies read those, right? Clearing the raid, of course, meant hard mode was next. Now this is where we stumbled quite a bit. We managed the bosses that were considered gimmies, but we didn't manage the same success as we had with our 10-man group, which was of course happening at the same time. It was a shame, and I probably felt really frustrated about it. In the end, I believe we killed these guys, which meant we were pretty close. Not really.
Note to self, cannon, highly effective against flesh.
Such a good fight, but such a mess. That's about it for Ulduar. Now let's move on to the infamous Trial of the Crusade. My take? I didn't like it. But that was only because of the PvP boss. I hated the PvP boss with passion. At this time, me and Edward were also leveling new characters. And I had grown quite fond of the warlock I made, and eventually went as far as to reroll to it. It was quite late in the patch, so it didn't horribly affect anything. But it did cause some friction, I recall, as it was my second reroll in the expansion. Affliction warlocks weren't that amazing at this point, but oh boy, for the last tier that was going to change. So in terms of progression in Trial, it wasn't amazing. We cleared it on normal in both 10 and 25-man. We had one group manage to complete the raid on 10-man hard mode, which I wasn't a part of. Can't remember how bothered I was about that, but I'd imagine not liking not being included. In terms of 25-man, I recall us only being able to do the first 2 bosses, which wasn't amazing, as they weren't considered hard at all. Moving quickly away from that, and towards ICC, the Icecrown Citadel. I'm quite fond of ICC in all honesty. It lasted very long, but I rated it from start to finish in both 10 and 25-man. But with one exception. I changed guilds early on. Now why did I do that? I had rerolled to a warlock and done quite a few bosses and then went for a new guild? Yes I did. This had been a long time coming, realistically. Was it me getting more competitive? Probably. Did I feel I needed to do it? Definitely. I was getting more angrier every raid for the failing of others, and as I was the person in charge of yelling, it probably showed. The guild had changed a lot over time. We had new members. We had members we felt we had to bring, as recruitment wasn't producing as skilled people as we wanted. I began feeling I didn't belong there anymore. I needed a place where I could enjoy raiding and not be upset over how others played. So I made the decision and applied to a guild, and another after it, then another. I even went as far as to swap factions to look for a guild. Why did I do that before being accepted to a horde guild? I don't fucking know, man, that was weird. In the end, I was vouched for by a past friend in a guild on Alliance side, and I joined their guild. I had always considered theirs quite a bit better, so it wasn't a bad deal, but I was probably aiming for a bit higher, so I didn't apply to theirs. This would be a guild I would be in for many expansions, so in hindsight, it was an amazing choice. I was asked if I wanted to raid 10-man, since they had room in their more serious group, and I felt I needed to say yes there to make a good impression. Yet, I didn't figure the raid started in the morning, at like 9 AM. I did it anyway. The guild was great, people were clearly better on average. There were still people who weren't performing, But I felt really pleased about my situation. I wasn't at the top of the meters anymore, which was sad, but it just meant I had to work harder, and soon enough I started competing again. Eventually I passed my trial and became a proper raider. Yet the same thing happened. I began to see what we lagged, and I began to fill in those roles. We needed a person doing this job? That'll be me. We need a person to call out something? That'll be me. We raided the place for a full year. In hindsight, it didn't feel like it, in all honesty. Every raider had their best in slot gear, me included, in the end. We cleared the raid on normal and on heroic on 10-man, but only 11 out of 12 on 25-man heroic, with a majority vote that said we didn't want to even bother with the Lich King on hard mode.
Another dead end.
I can't honestly remember how I felt about that at the time, but having the 10-man experience from it, it was quite a mess of a fight. Speaking of doing it on 10-man, we were server's second to do so, at least on Alliance side. Even went as far as to have the server first people swap their titles, because it wasn't as prestigious anymore, since we had it. That was massively amusing at the time. We also did the meta achievements on both 10 and 25-man quite early on. We kept raiding ICC and gave Ruby Sanctum a go or two, but ultimately ignored it. Though I think we did kill the hard mode on 10-man. It wasn't really that important in the grand scheme of things though, and quite frankly, barely anyone gave a shit about it. We raided it until Cataclysm hit and it was time to level up again. So that was Wrath of the Lich King. When thinking about it, it was probably the time I put the most hours into WoW, as there were times when I would wake up at 9 AM to raid, then wait till around 7 PM to raid again. I consider it a lot better of a time than TPC in all honesty. It's definitely the time I felt the most above average as a player, yet it is definitely also the most unhealthy time in terms of actual health for me. I felt tired most if not all of the time, and my food intake consisted of takeout and soda nearly every day, and I literally never left the house. Was that smart? Definitely not, but it happened. Thank you for watching or listening to me ramble about Wrath of the Lich King. Next up, Cataclysm. Give it a like or a dislike, either works, and subscribe for more ramble.